Ooh,
I've never heard that before.
me either.
It's one of their new features. All right, you're ready to go.
All right.
The lawyers made him do it.
Well, good evening, all. My name is Dave Baldini, and I am bringing to order this meeting of the Planning Commission for May 24th at 6:30. And would like to, before I start, we have someone new. Matt Lovely, where are you, Matt? Matt, this is your elevator pitch. The
Yes,
next
sir.
60 seconds, tell us who you are and what your expectations are for those of us who don't know you.
I lived in Newcastle since historic Newcastle since 2003, and I'm just happy to contribute to whatever I can do to help out. So happy to be involved.
All right,
Is that
then.
good?
That's good. With that said, we'll do the roll call. Jonathan Justice, as I said, won't be with us. So Erin,
Present.
John,
Present?
Gail,
Here.
Matt,
Here.
Vera. You're muted, Vera. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
George
Here.
and Bill?
Here.
Great. So we have a quorum. And with that said, next item on the agenda. Is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes from the last meeting? No? Okay, then can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. New business. We have no new business. So with that, we'll move on to the projects. And tonight we want to start with the plan process. We had talked before about streamlining the process, and when we talked with Jeff and with Chris, we talked about having some minor site plan activities done administratively. And Chris had sent us some concepts on that. So Chris, I'm going to give that to you, and then when we get that out of the way, we can come back to the subdivision process. So it'll be a two-parter, I guess, if you want to look at it that way.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like you discussed a few months ago, the Planning Commission wanted to consider making amendments to the zoning ordinance that would allow, further define the site plan process. Right now, the zoning ordinances doesn't have a lot of direction for applicants or citizens or anyone regarding the site plan process. So we crafted some draft language to the zoning ordinance that I think you were fairly happy with. And then you provided direction that perhaps, as Mr. Baldini said, some things should be considered administratively, and they don't have to rise to the level of Planning Commission review. So before I got too deep into, making draft changes to the zoning ordinance, I just wanted to get a feel for what that threshold would be, above and below which would be an administrative review and a Planning Commission review. So you should have something, just, a very brief handout called Minor Site Plan Outline. And there's nothing magic about the 5,000 square feet. But it's intended to be, a minor land development that would intended to be reviewed and approved administratively. And if you're happy with that type of threshold, we would, move forward with further draft language for the zoning ordinance that would, further describe that.
Okay.
I
Let me-
didn't want to go too far until.
Yeah. Let me ask Kim. Kim, can you bring that one up, that minor site plan outline? It's the document that has about 3 lines on it.
I'm working on that. I remembered why I don't do these meetings from home. It's because I'm remoting into my computer and I can't share that screen. So I'm
Okay,
working on
well,
that. But if
and
anybody else has it as an email, they can share their screen.
I can, let's see, if I can share my screen, I think, bring it up. Wait a minute. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
It's like an eye test, right? All right. Let me bring it up a little
Yeah,
bit.
so the intent is that, additions to existing, additions not exceeding 5,000 square feet to existing non-residential structures, could be reviewed administratively and approved by the building official. So, you wouldn't see them as a site plan. And then I thought I'd, throw in that last caveat. If for whatever reason the building official is uncomfortable with, approving something administratively, they can always refer it to the planning commission for your formal approval, for your formal review and approval.
Any questions from the
This-
commission? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, this is Bill. We all should have those handouts that Kim distributed. I think it's perfect the way it is. You can argue 5,000 feet, but you can argue that any number is arbitrary. That's certainly one that's in control for us. And as to the purpose, I think it's a good one. To establish a minor site plan outline is a great idea, and it should be incorporated.
All right. Anyone else have thoughts on this?
Just a question, is Jeff happy with this?
Yeah,
Larry.
I ran it past him just to let him know that I was running it past you, and he didn't raise any concerns.
No, I talked to Jeff today and he's very much in favor of this.
He was.
So is there any reason or is there any reason why we should not do this? Any of the commissioners opposing this? Then I'm not sure whether we need to make a motion on this or not, but we can do it just to keep things a little bit more structured. So can I have a motion that we approve the idea of this minor site plan outline to go do things administratively and allow Chris to go forward with the process to streamline?
So moved.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Off we go, Chris.
All right, thank you.
All right. Then the next item would be the subdivision process. And we had two documents relative to that. That was the where we had looked at the process and we had added the special exception language to the draft.
No, I think there's a proposed subdivision regulation amendments draft is the minor subdivision. We can go back. There's
Okay. Let me see.
I believe Bill added something to the site plan process, but if we want to move forward with the,
Let's see, what is this? This is the subdivision regulation.
all right, so along the same lines of creating a minor site plan process, the conversation continued into the minor subdivision process. And this is a little bit more convoluted, the way I'm proposing to address it. So this is language right from your existing subdivision regulations, and it was easier to work with your existing regs than to, write new stuff. So your subdivision regulations already define what a minor subdivision is, and that's it right there, and it's all crossed out. And it's clearly intending to allow minor subdivisions to be considered administratively. And I got to get our faces out of the way so I can read it.
Let's see.
The intent is that minor subdivisions that, the creation of lots which don't involve the extension of municipal facilities, you can read it. So that's your definition of a minor subdivision. That's fairly typical. A lot of times there's a lot limit on the number of lots that can be considered a minor subdivision, but your regulations don't have it. The issue is that, ever since I've worked for the city, and in talking to Jeff, it was this way before, that minor subdivisions of all kind have been reviewed by the Planning Commission. Even lot line adjustments where there's not a creation of any new lots. So instead of, and then furthermore, that existing definition says minor subdivisions shall be considered administratively pursuant to the procedures set forth in 213-7. There really isn't any further direction in that section of the code. This is the only reference to minor subdivisions in the subdivision regulations. So while it defines minor subdivision, it doesn't provide any further guidance, but I think the intent there is to allow those subdivisions to be reviewed and approved administratively. Again, having said that, everything, has always gone to the Planning Commission. So what I did is created a definition for a re-subdivision, which is an adjustment of a lot line that does not create any new building lots, and created language where re-subdivisions can be reviewed and approved by the building official. That would be on the next page in section D. So that's the intent there. And what these changes do, though, is it takes away the minor subdivision that would create a new building lot that could be approved administratively. So because all subdivisions have always gone to the Planning Commission, even a subdivision creating one additional lot, I thought that subdivisions that create a new building lot should continue to go to the Planning Commission. And re-subdivisions where there's just been an adjustment of a lot line, that's a silly application to go to a Planning Commission. Those are typically reviewed administratively because there's no new development potential being created from a re-subdivision as defined here in front of you. So does everybody follow that?
I do. I agree.
So on the one hand, I'm taking away what I think the ordinance intends, that some subdivisions could be reviewed administratively. That's never been done. Some clearly should be reviewed administratively, re-subdivisions, and that's what this language would do.
All right. And then the commission as a whole is comfortable with this? Anybody not comfortable with it?
Comfortable with it.
Yep.
All right. Then I think again, we're good to go, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, did you have, you had some language in the reformat that we did of Chris's original document about special exceptions? Do you want to discuss that or just let that roll into what we're doing?
Well, I thought we already did that. It does roll into what we're doing, but it's out of turn. First was the subdivisions.
Right.
And I would characterize that as it seems like the commission is in agreement with all of what Chris wishes to do. And to me, it makes a great deal of sense. Then we have nothing other than the permit application requirements and procedures, site plan review and approval, and so on and so forth. Not all of it is rewritten. The changes are made to really put it in order. And then the addition would be language for a special exception is inserted. And as I've explained in previous meetings, that is, it's to allow the board because it's, our ordinances are ultimately imperfect in that they don't anticipate everything. And they may make difficult or absolutely bar a development that we would wish to see. And that's the mechanism for allowing us to do it. Typically, it's to give an example, someone would walk in the door with an idea to do this and such, a use not entertained, whatever, and be advised that he can't do it, or she can't do it the way that they wish to do it. This allows the administrative people to turn around and say to the applicant, but you could try and get a special exception to the ordinance because you otherwise comply with this, and this. And that's what is set forth in the site plan review. And that's what is set for the procedurally, it is set forth and does not differ largely with a typical site plan review. Shouldn't. It's a good thing for any municipality to have. I'm about to torture metaphors or anything, so I have to calm down. It just enables us to do with the necessary protections afforded by the existing ordinances. It allows us to do something that we would like to see, but it's not otherwise provided for. It's as simple as that. And it's typically in the tri-state area, in every municipality, they have it in usually for zoning exceptions. Because, for instance, most zoning ordinances don't anticipate allowing for a hotel, let's say. They just don't do it. It's not in the municipality's planning code. What is the special permit or special exception procedure that allows you to go forward doing that because everybody is in agreement, that being zoning, planning, and eventually board of supervisors, or in our case, council, that, yeah, this is a great idea. We shouldn't be stopping this. And you're otherwise protected by the ordinances. So that was rather long-winded, but that's where we are. That's, I think, an accurate summary of what Chris has done and what I added to it. And I think we're in good shape. It's not paginated or formatted properly for reproduction because, as you all know, a lot of this is either additions to or replacement of the existing ordinances. And you want to have everything done properly, right down to changes in table of contents, so that you can just, for those on the list of that have the books, pull the now superfluous pages and insert the good ones. It's as simple as that. Now, and you have to make a determination, David, as to who does that. I don't know, to tell you the truth, but to me, that's the last step in what needs to be done. We're good to go.
Good.
I
All
mean,
right.
for presentation to council is what I meant to say.
All right. Then I think we've got it all covered, and I think we're all in favor of all of this going forward. So Chris, I think
Can I
sure.
provide some input?
Mhm.
I'm not sure what's intended here. The zoning ordinance already permits certain uses in every zone, more or less, as special exceptions that are approved by the Board of Adjustment. For example, daycare centers, kindergartens, and preschools are permitted as a special exception, in the R2 zone. That's just one example. And all special exceptions have to be approved by the Board of Adjustment in a quasi judicial setting. The Board of Adjustment is made up of the mayor, the city engineer, and the city attorney. And all special exceptions have to be reviewed by the Planning Commission for a recommendation. So if that's what's intended here, that's kind of already covered in your zoning ordinance. If this is meant to cover or to address allowing an applicant to under certain circumstances to not have to adhere to some regulations, under these conditions, then that's what a variance is. If they can't meet a setback, or if they can't meet, a lot line requirement or a lot setback requirement. Delaware law does allow for use variances. So if there's a particular use that's not permitted in a certain zone, then the applicant can request a use variance, which is also approved by the Board of Adjustment. So I apologize, but I don't know where what this is intended for from a land use and zoning regulation standpoint.
Since it does us no harm, it is intended for the situation that was not anticipated.
Like to,
You just named an ordinance that allowed special exceptions for A, B, C, and D. What happens if they want to come in and do E? By virtue of matters of construction, in writing an ordinance, that which, once you undertake to express what is allowed, and you do not express that which is unspoken to, you need a mechanism for allowing it, should that be the case. I mean, we don't, it does you no harm. My point to you, Chris, and I don't care if you throw the whole thing out, but I know it does absolutely no harm under the ordinance, and can streamline and provide proper procedure for that which is unanticipated.
but I would say that that's what the variance provisions are, in a zoning ordinance, that allow an applicant to go to the Board of Adjustment and ask for some relief from the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And I believe that that can also apply to a use. So the approval of a use variance is a very high bar to meet from an applicant standpoint, but the provision is there to allow that application and to be made under Delaware law and case law.
And that was my understanding too, that is the purpose of the Board of Adjustment. So if there is a special exception, that's the current process that's documented. Because I was getting a little confused, I think this language was pulled from somewhere, but it starts out by the township supervisors and the board, and I wasn't sure who in the city of Newcastle specifically was being referred to. So
Well, let me ask this. Does this language give more strength to the special exception protocols that we have? Does it beef them up?
Well, that's an interesting point that I've noticed in your zoning ordinance, and I don't want to go off topic, but since you asked, oddly, your zoning ordinance does not have any even general guidelines for the Board of Adjustment regarding their review of special exceptions. I don't think we've ever discussed this. This has just happens to be, I think, happenstance with this discussion, but it's always been something that I've noticed. Most zoning ordinances have at least very general language about harmony with the neighborhood, health, safety, welfare, light, noise, and air pollution, that the Board of Adjustment will consider in granting a special exception.
And this has the identical language. If you're saying, what are you saying, Chris? That it's redundant or that it's in conflict?
Well, it's in conflict with if you want to beef up the Board of Adjustments general criteria by which they judge special exceptions, then it has some good language. If the intent is to allow variances from the zoning ordinance provisions, then it's in conflict with the existing ordinance. So section 23057 is the powers and duties of the zone of the Board of Adjustment.
50.
And section B is about special exceptions. And it does, you know, it does say, it has, oh, good.
Which one did you say? 230, what?
57.
57. All right.
B.
Uh-huh.
So that's the powers and duties of the Board of Adjustment, is to hear and decide special exceptions under B. And if you go back, and you don't need to go, but like I said, every zone has a list of uses that are permitted by special exception, like daycares and residential zones. And all this does is really describe the process. Oddly, it says you can provide conditions and safeguards, but it really doesn't say. Most zoning ordinances have, you know, the Board of Adjustment must determine that it's harmonious with the community, consistent with the comprehensive plan, the kind of stuff that was in Bill's language, I think for a different reason, but it's just a coincidence that it happens to address something that I think has been missing in your zoning ordinance. Now, just, you know, bear with me for a second. But this happens a lot in zoning ordinances. Oddly enough, your zoning ordinance has the very type of language that I'm talking about, but it's only for special exceptions in the DG zone. You know, I know our company was, you know, took part in the writing of that zone. I wasn't involved in that. But if you go to Bill or Dave, 230.34.21.
I'm sorry, 230 what? 20?
Yeah, you kind of have to go back, hit the zoning. Right above commission, if you hit zoning, it'll take you back to the whole code. Or the whole zoning ordinance. Or the whole code.
All right, let me see. This is
There you
not
go.
this.
What was the number again?
230.
230.
I mean, you told me what, 230?
Yeah, I think if you go down to, keep strolling down, you'll get to the zoning again.
Okay.
It's up. There you go. I'm sorry, 230.34 or -34. Oh, that's not it.
That's satellite dishes.
I'm sorry.
All right.
230-21.
The downtown gateway, right?
Yeah. And if you go to C, right there.
Mhm.
So this is just the DG zone. So it's listing, it's referring to uses that are permitted by special exception in the DG zone. And then under 2, it says the planning commission shall, so on and so forth. Now, those are the types of general conditions that I'm talking about that should apply to all special exceptions, not just special exceptions in the DG. So all of these things are conflating. I think Bill was intending to address one thing. Dave asked, can we beef up the special exception language? So the special exception language in your zoning ordinance doesn't have general criteria except for that in the DG zone, which I believe is misguided, and that these types of conditions, because they're so general, interests of the city, convenience of the community, effect on public services, those should apply to all special exceptions everywhere in the city considered by the Board of Adjustment.
I agree. I agree, and it's an easy change to make.
Yes. Yep.
Well, then let go forward and make the change. And then you don't have a problem. And look, those criteria that you just recited are staple in ordinances. And what they're really there to do is to give people who want to vote against it something to hang their hat on. And let's face it, that's exactly what happens.
Well,
It has no meaning. I mean, the general welfare, are you gonna, a planning board is not going to determine what is and is not the general welfare of the municipality. It's 10,000 angels on the head of a pin. But I hear what you're saying, Chris, and I agree with it. So change the language so that it applies not to a single classification, but to all. Does that not solve your problem?
yeah, I mean, the city's lived with it. I just have noticed it as a gap in the zoning ordinance and an inconsistency since it was in the DG zone. But since your language was addressing special exception, thought I'd bring it up. So
It makes a lot of sense to me.
yeah, it doesn't belong just in the DG.
Right.
And
No,
you don't have anything for the universe of special exceptions. And this is typical universal special exception language that any Board of Adjustment would use. And it wouldn't change the fact that the special exception has to be reviewed by the Planning Commission for a recommendation. If we're moving forward with these cleanups, can I point out one more?
absolutely.
I should have. Can we go back to the special exception section? There we go.
Where did you want to get?
Go up right above the DG. There you go. Now back down to zoning.
Mhm. 30, 21, right?
Wherever the Board of Adjustment was,
For
230-57.
57. All right. Let me go back here. 57. Special
If we
exceptions.
go to B, B2,
Okay. B1,
B. Up above a little bit.
okay,
If you could go, just scroll. So this is the procedure. So a written application, and B, the planning, the Board of Adjustment cannot, the precursor to all of A through E is a special exception shall not be granted by the Board of Adjustment unless and until B, the Planning Commission or the Historic Commission have reviewed the application and forwarded a favorable recommendation to the board where such review is required on this chapter. It should not say and forwarded a favorable recommendation. A board that is just there to recommend cannot hold up should not be able to hold up an application. So your job is just to review it and make a recommendation. This is essentially giving the Planning Commission and the HAC. We've never been challenged on this, but if we're cleaning up things, this has always been another thing that I've thought could cause problems in the future.
okay. So are we striking out favorable? Or what are we doing?
This is Bill.
Okay.
I agree, Chris. And that was dangerous language, hack or planning board. I'd rather see the planning board or some parenthetical or hack if applicable, because the language is too general, would simply allow them to insert themselves in the process that they don't belong in.
Well, I mean, all special exceptions have to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. Only those, I guess, in the Historic District by HAC. It should just say the Planning Commission or the Historic Commission has reviewed the application and forwarded a recommendation.
You're saying to remove the word favorable.
Yes. Yeah.
Agreed. Makes,
It's just something that I've always noticed and been nervous about.
And that's because if it wasn't a favorable recommendation, it could just sit in the planning commission or on the HAC and hold up the process.
Excuse me. Yes, someone could make that argument, and that can never be the situation. It would just cause confusion. You're just there in the special exception situation just to make a recommendation. And
I agree.
You can make a unfavorable recommendation and it moves forward to the Board of Adjustment.
I agree.
yeah,
All right. Then we move forward on that, Chris, on that change.
There's a lot more, but
We'll do them in inch stones. We'll do a couple and then we'll get that out of the way. We'll do a couple more. Unless they are verbiage such as this, if they're easy to strike, one or two words. How
Mr. Chairman,
many do you have roughly?
I wouldn't say, overt things, as overt as this. And I'm not pitching anything for work. I'm going to need to get the city's approval to move forward with any of this, but I think your code needs some reorganization. There's things that are hard to find for an applicant or a citizen that have been patched together over the years, and that's not unusual. It's just not unusual at all. And every now and then, a municipality either, does some cleanup and or recodifies where things are readjusted and put where they should be. because, something comes up, there's the ordinance needs to be amended. Somebody's in a hurry. It's probably not put in the most favorable spot in the ordinance, and it could cause confusion, in the least in the future, or legal problems at the worst.
This is Bill. I'm in total agreement, and Chris used the magic word evolved, and that's how these things happen, because they merely evolve, and they don't come as a finished product to you. And I believe if we emerge from this meeting with nothing other than a recommendation that Chris be authorized, and I suppose that's council, to go forward and make these repairs and make the document more coherent. We've made a lot of progress. Let's finish it and allow Chris to do what he needs to do. But it does happen by evolution. And the hit and miss thing eventually catches up with you.
Right, so that I'm clear as to where we're going here. We are going to go forward with the streamlining, right? And then we are moving that special exception language into all of the zoning classes, as opposed to just the DG. And then we change that verbiage, removing the word favorable. Do these cleanups, and then as well do the recommendation to the city that we clean up and recodify. So there were essentially 4 items here. Or are we saying that we try and do the recodification and all of that at one shot? My concern is that the city will balk, and it'll be a budget item, and the budget's well in process. And so rather than lose a year, I'd rather go through and get these things out of the way and then pick some more and maybe do them along the way. And keep that recodification recommendation in front of them, so that any opportunity to do this as it comes up, if they get a sudden windfall of cash, that we can then move forward with this. It might allow us to move forward, as opposed to just being stalled with the budget process. I'm open to comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
sorry, I know I'm new at all this, and I think this is great. I just had a question on one of the handouts that we had. I don't know if this is going to apply to our conversation regarding the proposed draft revisions to 230-46. Under site plan review on the first page, item number C. Again, this is just a question. It just seems like that, and if I'm getting off base here, I apologize. It says, it just seems a little arbitrary to me that the planning commission can waive information from Appendix A if it's not included. I don't know, it seems like that kind of puts us out there a little bit. Shouldn't that be something where the applicant would have to justify or request us to waive something rather than at the planning commission's discretion?
I'm sorry, where were you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's one of the handouts that we got, the proposed draft revisions to section 230-46. And it's the very first page. It says section 10 permit application requirements and procedures.
Yes.
Okay, so item C there, my concern, and again, I'm new to this, I apologize, is that where it says we may waive information required in appendix A if we deem the information unnecessary. It seems like that's
Oh, I
kind of
see.
putting the
I'm
planning,
sorry.
it seems like it's kind of putting the planning commission out there, and it seems like the applicant should request that something that's not normally required be waived as opposed to
Yeah,
the planning commission deeming it.
I understand. That section is intended to only address items that are required to be on the plan. It doesn't mean that you can waive a zoning requirement. It means that if you want to allow them to use a 100 scale instead of a 50 scale, or it's really waiving information that could go on, that needs to go on a plan per the appendix. It's not allowing you to waive a fundamental regulation, if that makes, if you're uncomfortable with it, I can take it out, but the intent is not to allow you to change, to vary the regulations. It just means that, okay, this is a super simple site plan, so we're not going to require you to put soil types on it or to show soil types. Because that's what Appendix A is. Appendix A is just a site plan shall have soil types, topography, utilities.
Got it.
So,
My concern was I just didn't want to, maybe in the court of public opinion look like, we are determining what people can submit and not submit. I just want to make sure that there's a consistency there. And it's justified. That's all.
understood. Thank you. That can be cleaned up a little bit.
All right, I'm going to come back to where I think we're at now with is going forward with, now we now have 4 items relative to this, and that was going forward with the streamlining of the process, of the site plan process here. The special exception language that was in the document, moving toward to being consistent special exception language across all of the zones. Then taking out the word favorable in the 230-50-57-1B. And then recommending that we do all the cleanup and recodification for the code. Is that everybody's understanding?
So David, I'm not sure what you mean by clean up, the recodification.
To what Chris suggested, that it's got to be is it the code of the, I can't even get my thoughts together here. The renumbering and the topics, reorganization and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think he means just to make it more coherent, it came in at different junctures throughout the life of the ordinance, and it's merely a reference to streamlining it so that it flows and follows.
Yeah, user friendly, making it more user friendly. Is that a better choice of words?
Can I add something so I don't seem like I'm causing more work for the city. So
Yeah.
there were specific things that we started to address that we've just ticked off, the defining the site plan process, allowing for a minor site plan, allowing and clarifying the minor subdivision process, and now cleaning up the special exception language.
Mhm.
Those were things that you directed me to look into.
Right.
I don't want it to be perceived that I think the whole ordinance needs to be recodified, and that coming from the city planner.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm just saying that every code has to go through that at some point.
I agree. That's why we should be making the recommendation to council that those items you've just ticked off should be done.
So, and Chris, I agree with you. And I think the special exception language should not be in the site plan, but should be in the part of the zoning that as you recommended.
What I was trying to distinguish between the specific items, and
Right.
those are and then a larger project of recodification and cleanup, and that's a larger project. It's a more
That would
expensive
be, yeah,
undertaking.
that would make major impact for the budget kind of thing.
Yes.
So let's just do the cleanups in here and then work it into the budget. It'll probably be next year's budget anyway, this as of right now. But it gives everybody a chance, it gives the city a chance to plan for it, knowing that it's coming and things of that nature. So that may be the way to go. And as we go along, we see these things that can be cleaned up administratively or however during the year, then we'll approach it that way. And I think it'll allow us to keep it moving and keep it in front of everybody, so that it's not a surprise come budget time. So are we all comfortable with that?
I
All
am.
right.
Anybody not comfortable? All right, then. Then we're good, I think.
Thank you.
Well, Chris, I'm
Yeah.
sure you caught it. On your table, like presentation, just like, it looks like the computer just had an eruption. One that follows site plan and review and approval, there's a table attached to it. And you go down to description, just drop the N in the heading, right there in top middle.
Let's see if I can get there. Let me see.
Okay.
I don't have it.
Got it.
So that we understand the process going forward, will you put together language based on what we just agreed to before it goes to council?
Well, I mean, what would,
I mean, the site plan, I think we're good with. I guess it would be the zoning changes. Were you just planning on taking the DG language and moving it up so it applies in all cases of a special exception?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. So I wouldn't anticipate having to get that back to you in some general format before it's, I could go from this conversation to ordinance language.
okay.
But what I just need to check in with Jeff and Bill to, get authorization to move forward. So
Okay.
it would be, the next steps technically and legally would be that draft ordinances would be created and with very, specific language regarding these sections. And it would have to be introduced to city council and it would be forwarded to you as the planning commission for a recommendation and then back to the city council for a public hearing.
All right.
And, you may have to have a public hearing too. I'd have to check the zoning amendment section.
Okay, so do we have anything more relative to the subdivisions for the process? All right, then I'm going to move to the electric car chargers.
Dave, this is Kathy. I just have a question. Do we need a motion on anything other than the site plan outline?
I think what we need to do is add the things that we talked about, those 3 things that we talked about. Cleaning up or rather streamlining it with the administrative process. Moving the special exception language into all of the zoning classes. And that word favorable out of 230, 57, 1B. And I think that ties back into the motion that we started with originally.
So you want to add all that right into that same motion?
Yes.
Okay. You want to
Yes.
do it? Do you want to officially do it or just have me do it?
I thought we officially did it way back.
Okay, we're good.
I think if you go back to the, I don't know, were we 10 minutes in, give or take a bit, you might find whatever that motion was.
Right, I have it, thanks.
Okay. All right. John, you want to take us through the charges?
Sure. And
Where we are on Plymouth Street?
got some good news to report regarding that. The first charger installation is underway as we speak. I connected with Scott Blomquist last week. The foundation is in, and I believe it's expected to be completed this week. So that's a huge step. It's one charger, but it's encouraging that we've finally made some movement on that. And as many of you know, Scott Blomquist is now the new general manager of the MSC. Just took that position from Pam Patone. So also regarding that, I need to get back to him to determine the final number of chargers they are expected to be purchased under the state rebate program. Additionally, we discussed the federal money, at the last meeting, federal money pending under the infrastructure bill. And that's a real hot mess right now. The GOP and the Democrats, of course, are going back and forth. Right now, the Democrats just proposed to lower their bill from 2.3 trillion and to 1.7 trillion. Wow, trillion here, trillion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money, huh? And on the Democrat side, they are proposing 15 billion allocated for car charger installations. The GOP side, they've got no money allocated. So where they meet, I don't know. They've got, of course, it's going to have to get past the Senate. And of course, they have the filibuster to deal with, and also Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, the Democrat who is also pushing back against the Democrat plan as it exists. So again, that's just up in the air right now. We don't know how much money is going to be coming down the road. If I expect something they'll work something out. But that's just something that's up in the air as it stands. And that's a lot of that news just broke the past couple of days. So anyway, I'm happy to see the first chargers going in, and we do have to make a determination going down the road. Where do they plan to roll out the next installations, be it the library parking lot, the 3rd Street, or the Chestnut Street parking lot right down the street from the MSC. So that's it's encouraging to see it finally happened. It's going in, and we'll hopefully, and I'm going to circle back with Scott and see if they've made a determination, how do they want to proceed with the further installations, be it another charger at 3rd Street or a new installation at one of the other locations.
So the first one's gonna be at 3rd Street, John?
I'm sorry?
The first charge is gonna be on 3rd Street there?
It is in a 3rd Street parking lot. It's being installed as we speak. The foundation's already in.
Are they gonna monitor that for a while to see how it's gonna be used, as far as, where they're gonna put the second one at, or? How would they monitor
Correct.
it?
The first one, they're going to monitor initially. The plan is they're not going to charge anybody.
Okay.
And just to see, I expect it's going to be used. I know at least, I think there's 3 people in town that are going to be plugged into it pretty quickly. But it's really a trial of sorts to see how the technical aspects are going to work before they go into the next step, and that's actually enabling the billing function of it. So it's very encouraging to see that installed. So they'll just get over that hump and get some feedback.
Yeah, there was something that was said at the, I believe it was the last city council meeting. In the notes, it said city administrator indicated that he thought that the city council will not have an issue with MSC owning, operating, and maintaining all EV charging systems purchased for the city. Now, is this only for their public parking lots that they're talking about, or this has to do with any of like the commercial areas, like retail commercial areas too?
As far as I know, this is only pertaining to the city-owned areas, the parking lots.
Okay,
I
gotcha.
believe as far as the commercial areas, they would be those, say, the River Plaza.
Mhm.
They would be responsible for their own installations, and
Okay.
they could own the chargers, own the revenue that's generated by them.
Mhm.
That would be my understanding, at least as it stands now. That's how it's going to be implemented.
Okay.
John, this is Bill. And I don't want to get you off track money wise, but you were talking about funding and so on with the second, I'll use the term loosely, infrastructure bill. I think that if I am not mistaken, under the first infrastructure bill, which was, of course, not a bill, but signed in as an executive order.
Okay.
There was a great deal of money that was, by virtue of is formulaic, and I don't begin to understand it. Let's face it, it has to do with which politicians can prevail over the other ones. But I thought that City of Newcastle was earmarked for a nice chunk of change. That is going to be, first of all, that's what I was referring to. That windfall of funds is out there. And to the extent it's appropriate for us to throw our hat into the ring for that, And since it actually has to do with infrastructure, you could certainly make the argument that it does. We should try and be tracking that down. It may be a close state secret where it's going and everything, but yeah, just as a heads up to you.
Okay. Okay, I'll have to dig into that some more because I was not aware that had already money had already been allocated
Well,
by executive order, but
yeah,
I didn't.
that term was used loosely. The executive order gave the amount of money and then a formula for how it would be distributed. And then in the genius of politicians, it was left for the politicians to fight over. So that's where it stands to my knowledge. I don't think it's been earmarked. I'm not even sure that we are going to receive any funds, but it's worth asking the question because if it would help fund our initial foray into the whole electric usage.
Absolutely. I will chase that. And as you said, it may be a well hidden, kept state secret at this point, but I'll start digging deeper and see what I can find on that, because if there's free money out there, we should be going for it.
John, circle back with Bill Barthel. If the city's been notified of anything, then he would know.
Okay. I will do that.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I wanted to chime in a little bit too, as far as the commercial side of it. Just based on,
Next on the list.
yeah, just in my opinion here, based on what I've been noticing, I think there's going to be different charging needs in different commercial areas. Centerpoint, obviously, you're going to have Amazon there, changing over into the commercial fleet soon. So there's definitely be a huge need, and it's going to be a big necessity from them. And I think they're going to be moving pretty quickly there. From another retail standpoint, like we're Farmers Market, BJ's, Home Depot area. Since our last meeting, I've been kind of circling through there on the weekends, just checking things out. A lot of the cars there, I say over 90% of them are from Delaware, so it's a lot of local traffic still. A few of them sprinkled from New Jersey, I guess, coming over the bridge and doing some shopping on the weekends there. Some people shopping longer in the Farmers Market and BJ's, spending about a half hour to an hour there at a time. So it'd be a good place to have some chargers, maybe between Farmers Market and BJ's there. Not really dedicated to Farmers Market at all, but maybe where the fence is in BJ's so they can cross utilize those. Maybe down the road too, in front of Planet Fitness, and if we ever get a grocery store there too that replaces Pathmark, people spend a lot of time in those businesses, and I think they can benefit from charging in those locations as well. Home Depot, not so much. They're pretty much in and out over there. But this is all, based upon the trustees being willing to get on board and place some charges there. River Plaza, also mostly patronized by locals there. A lot of in and out traffic with more people hanging out in the restaurant for a little bit longer period of time. On the ferry cutoff area, I feel like we do have a good amount of pass-through traffic from people going to and from New Jersey and New York a lot. So some of the benefits maybe or opportunities of putting charges at the plaza or even downtown here is that now they're going to show up on the EV cars charging maps, and it might promote new stops and visits to charge up vehicles, and whereas they might have just driven past us before. So this is going to help some local stores and retailers and businesses around town as a result. Might be able to help increase some revenue at these stores because it's a longer dwelling time. Average charging time is around 30 minutes, I think. So they might linger more, fill out their baskets more, spend a little bit more in town or at the local establishments. From a landlord's perspective, retail has been hit bad this past year as a result of the pandemic. So many landlords, including us, have had to make concessions to help businesses, small and large, survive and weather it. We also have to budget annually for certain repairs and maintenance throughout the center. We just finished replacing all the lighting and a large section of the roof, which cost a big amount of money. And I think implementation really all comes down to, the cost of the charging stations and what it's going to cost to install them, and being able to get the rebates. I think everybody would like to do their part, but I think this is really what it comes down to. So, like Bill and John said, I think we really need to focus on how we can get a piece of that infrastructure bill with the grants to make it happen, and show that our town is a little bit more sustainable in that nature. So those are my thoughts.
George,
I'm coming from.
George, do these charging stations take up existing parking lot spaces, or are they going to be additional parking spaces in the commercial areas?
They have to be existing. Yeah.
Okay. Is that going to cause any problems with the?
Yeah, I don't know, because you have to have a certain amount of minimum parking space required in your center. Now, how that will affect designated certain parking spaces for EV, I really don't have the answer to that. If that's going to be any negative effect, but I really don't think it will. Especially.
And what about the handicap? Is there handicap EV parking combo spaces?
That's a good question.
Isn't there certain requirements for that too? Yeah.
I really don't know, to be honest with you. That's a good question.
Thank you, George.
Sure.
Now, we need to get, I asked last month, I asked if we get 2 volunteers to start getting thoughts together relative to the residential side. I mean, if you've got on-street parking, we've got an issue there. And then if you look at the different developments, say Washington Park, where you have, you got sidewalks, and then you've got the grass patch and while you're in the street. Dovinsville, you park right up onto the pavement. Newcastle itself, you're parking right up on the curb, dragging cords across I mean, there's opportunities out there, things that we've got to consider relative to the whole different neighborhood approach. Each neighborhood is going to have a slightly different approach, I think. And we just have to get some thoughts together on how we want to express a path forward. I don't know that we know enough to have a recommendation yet. I mean,
yeah, I'm not sure either.
I think, am I on? I shared on my Facebook page just a few simple questions to my small circle, and I let all of you know about that. And the response rate was minimal. Five people in total responded to my survey questions, and they were really basic, just generally, what's your interest in it? Are you interested in buying a vehicle? Do you have one currently? Are you interested in shared parking, charging stations versus having access at home? So I think the questions were basic enough, but the response really wasn't on my very small survey. There wasn't much interest at all. So I don't know if that was on my end from lack of promotion or a small circle, or my circle just isn't interested. But I figured that was a small start into what I can try to do a little bit more on the public neighborhoods interest level.
Erin, you filmed the next Zoom presentation holding a puppy. You'll get a huge response.
That might work.
well, it's much appreciated, Aaron. Much appreciated. I don't think it's on your side. I think because the population of electric cars is small, the interest is only focused on those that own at the moment. But as I think it'll be a growing audience, if you will,
For sure.
as more people are facing that choice. But
I think the Ford company is starting with their F-150s,
yes,
which is huge. That's a gigantic market. So it kind of gets a little bit closer to the everyday person. In that
I feel like
sense.
the electric cars, they really have to start to become more affordable. You
Right,
know?
Right.
And I think part of the infrastructure bill, a certain part of it as giving incentives to own to EVs is really needs to push it forward. Because
Mhm.
a lot of people, I mean, I think the average demographic for somebody who owns an electric vehicle right now is somebody who owns over $75,000 a year. And looking at the comprehensive plan's last study for the city of Newcastle, in 2017, average median household income is 59,000. So we need that incentive from the government to give the rebates or something and the cost to come down to start making it a little bit more mainstream so we start to see a difference, you know?
Right.
Okay.
Now, Dave, when you're talking about the residential
Yeah.
plan, we're really looking, thinking about that. We're looking at two big scenarios. You mentioned Washington Park, which is where I happen to live. And people that live in Newcastle municipality that live in areas like that are likely just to install a unit either in their garage if they have a garage or right on their own property. So I think that would be something that those residents in those areas would be responsible for. I think the bigger, more challenging issue is how are we going to address, say, the historic area or areas like that where people don't have off-street parking. It's strictly on street. And how do we? And again, I mentioned the solution that was in Europe by the company Ubitricity, where they have metered parking in the lampposts. And also, there's the option somebody wants to put a charger, perhaps as has already been done right in front of their house. Putting it on a horsehead lamppost or a hitching post or whatever. Yeah, they're two very different issues there when we're talking about the residential, depending. And I think that, again, the bigger challenge is how are we going to address that in the historic area going forward.
Especially if you can't get your own parking spot in front of your house in the historic district too. If your charger's there and then somebody parks there, then where do you have to park somewhere else?
Exactly. Yes.
Difficult.
If that charger is wired to your house and you
Right.
want to switch, that's going to be an issue right there. Yes.
Definitely,
So that's why I say that's going to be the bigger challenge. How do we address
Well,
that?
that's the reason I want to get the conversations and the thought process going. I mean, we have enough squabbles in town when you can't park in front of your house. Now, when you start to add the economics of charges like that, now you affect the livelihood, and it'll go to, what was it, Giuliani thing, trial by combat? You're not going to park there unless. So I think we need to start to think about it sooner rather than later.
Do we need to also take into account the churches along Market Street and Second Street there, Emmanuel and the Presbyterian Church? Seems to, there's a on-street parking there, which may take residential, or I don't know, just something to think about.
It's something that's got to be added into the equation. Yeah, I think. All right. Do we have anything else that we want to bring up on the chargers? Or we want to add something to the to-do list here? To-do list.
Hey,
All right.
John, one more question for you, John.
Sure.
Because I saw you did get 90% back from the state as a rebate for the chargers, and then 10% back from the Green Energy Fund. And I know the state ends in June 30th, but the actual cost of the charger was how much? Do you remember how much it was?
I believe the rep from SemaConnect, I think it was in a neighbor, $700, something along that, and that's not installed.
Okay. Do you know what the installation costs are?
That would be, I would have to get with Scott Blomquist on that. They're doing installation. It would be under whatever the MSC is doing. I believe they're doing the work themselves. They're not contracting it, but I'd have to confirm that.
And but the actual cost of the chargers themselves before the rebates were $700?
I believe that was it, but I have to confirm that number.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Oh.
All right. Are we good for the electric cars?
Yeah, and
right.
Dave, as you said, you were looking for a couple of volunteers. I'd be happy
Yeah.
to move forward on the residential side in the historic districts, and so I've already been chasing that and doing some preliminary research into it. So, and
Okay.
again, it's going to be more of a challenge than the installations and parking lots. It's going to be a lot more straightforward.
Anyone who want to help John?
Definitely help, John.
All right, Aaron, appreciate it. And if you can't get a hold of the puppy, then you can get something from one of the neighborhoods.
I have two you can borrow.
I might take you up on that, Bill.
All right, then I want to go to the WMAPCO. Gail, how are we? Anything happening on the?
No update. So
Okay.
I assume they're all working feverishly away on the plan. So I don't have any dates for another update from the consultants.
Okay. Good. All right. Any other comments from the commission? All right, with that, I think we'll move to public comments. Kim, do we have anybody out there?
We have 4 people in the meeting. I don't see any hands at this point. Oh, okay. We have Phil Gross. I'm gonna allow him to talk. Okay. There you go.
And good afternoon. Yep. Thank you for guys for all you're doing. I do have a couple comments. One, the library, as far as the possible charging station, Scott and Pam and them said there were some streams, underground streams or wells or something. So it looks like the library parking lot's not a possibility, just to give you a heads up on that. John, as far as potential places that I've been recommending and you might want to check out when you do your tour of town, one is near the city building towards the end of the courthouse, not directly in front of, because people take pictures and you don't want it to give a feel Back to the Future, you know, especially with the new inn going there, and then the 2 gentlemen doing the Mercury, eatery. So there is a need there. Also, I've always said down by the circle, where you have a constant flow of people, that generally you'll be about an hour, hour and a half. So it shouldn't be an all-day parking thing. And then, of course, George, not to plug your center there, but definitely I would highly recommend there versus the farmers market area for 2 reasons. One, most of the areas in and out. Number 2, honestly, I don't see that area being forever annexed by the city, and for MSC and the city to be putting money up there, I think is a ridiculous waste of money and our resources, especially since, to answer your question, was a total of 9 charging stations, including the one that they've got, because that was a total allotment. So again, just a thought for commercial spaces. You do want to kind of reward local people, and
Right.
so
Okay, thanks, Phil.
those areas, as well as down by the not necessarily the tennis courts, because you've got the 3rd Street parking area covered, but maybe down by the yacht club and the walking path. That's another area. And lastly, I do have to hand it to you guys for streamlining and not having to involve your committee every time someone wants to confirm whether their yard confirms with the space that's on their deed. So that I think lastly, where does one get a copy of the zoning map, including the gateway? Because I do remember 2 days before the last election, not this current one, but 2 years ago, our mayor, Mr. McCorda, mysteriously was asked to sign a new zoning change, which again, uh, my ears and eyes opened up because I don't want to see a bunch of apartment complexes and a potential hotel being built down in that area. So I really want to closely check, like you guys were talking about, what certain zoning criteria will allow and not allow. Where does one get a copy?
You'll find the zoning codes in the city code under 230, just section 230, as we just went through. And
Okay,
then to the zoning maps, the land use maps, et cetera, are all associated with the comprehensive plan, and that's also on the website.
okie dokie. Well, you guys are the greatest, and thanks again. Your work's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, and I have Mr. Rod Miller.
Okay. Mr. Miller, how are you? You're muted. You're muted.
How about now? Okay.
We're good.
Okay. Hey, I'm a genius almost. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the topic that I've brought up to your board a couple times in the past. It's been a couple of years ago, but I think some of you, I guess, were on the board then. I don't really remember. I see some new faces here, but it's the idea about an ordinance preventing people from converting existing residential properties into more units than
Tap house,
they
right.
currently are.
We addressed some of that in the comp plan, I believe.
Yeah, just but before I say anything else, yeah, just update me because I've kind of been out of the loop here. I guess a lot of people have for a while. So I know I've spoken about this with some people on some council people. But yeah, let me know what's going on with that before I say any more.
It's not a discussion. It's a comment, so make your comment.
Oh, my comment is we need one badly. Again, I'd be delighted to have this discussion with anybody about this. I have personal upfront and up close experience with it. I don't think it doesn't really seem to, I guess, to most people I've met here to be, such a super important issue, which I can understand. But if there's one area that I can equate this with something really important in this city anyway, it's with parking. Depending on the city, again, these multi-unit rentals, which, I'm speaking now not of apartments, that's a different topic. We're talking about people that have taken existing single family homes and chopped them up into 2, 3, 4, 5, and across the street from me, there's even a 6-unit apartment. It's historically a terrible thing, for any city. It just can cause immense problems. A lot of towns in South Jersey ran into this. They've already made the change. Over here, we just seem to have a lot higher quality of life and property values than what I'm used to where I come from in New Jersey. So it doesn't cause those kind of problems, I think, because of maybe just, the atmosphere and what you charge for rent and whatnot. I don't really see a whole lot of problems with the people that are actually renting, at least not in my, area. But it just causes such havoc with the parking that's already a problem. When you're trying to compete with parking with a sixplex, a triplex, a duplex, another triplex, on and on, when, there's enough problems just, finding parking as it is. That's the main issue that I can see with this being a problem here. So I don't know if you could say I was surprised when I found out that you didn't have such an ordinance. I just guess what surprised me was that a lot of people hadn't really considered it. And I said, well, I really think it's an easy thing for the city to do if they're in agreement with this. I can't imagine anybody being opposed to it. If you know anybody that is, please send them my way. I'd love to discuss it with them. It's particularly in the historic area, as far as, you know, like when you have to go in front of the hack board for anything. Of course, that's all any external things that you want to do with your property. What you do on the inside, you know, you can chop it all up or do whatever awful things you want to your historic property. I guess a lot of people haven't been worried about that, but if you don't have a law on the books, it might not affect you now or next year, but if you look 20, 30, 40 years down the road, I understand Newcastle had a lot of issues 30, 40 years ago. You know, wasn't maybe the nicest place, probably nowhere near, you know, what it is now. If it ever comes to a time where some of these big giant houses, if the market really takes a downturn, and, you know, a lot of the people that live in them now are not getting any younger, and maybe at some point their kids don't want them, the grandkids maybe don't want them. And, you know, what are you going to do with these big giant 4,000 or 5,000 plus, you know, square foot homes when you got a big tax bill to pay? And when somebody talks you into, you know, knocking out a couple walls here, putting in an electric meter here or there, and tells you all the money that you can make, you know, each month, you know, from renting it out, that's when your neighborhood really starts to decline. Now, I don't know if that'll ever happen here in my lifetime, but you need that law on the books. I mean, it's just, you know, I'd be happy to discuss this with anybody, because I know towns that have run into this and they have passed that law. And to me, if you really understand it, it's a no-brainer. It doesn't affect, and it grandfathers everybody in. It just says from this point forward, you can no longer add additional living units to your property, regardless of whatever any of the other zoning issues may be. I know a lot of them maybe will preclude some of that anyway, but my point is, why take a chance? Have that ordinance on the books and be done with it.
Okay. Some of your elements are within the code already, and then I'm sorry there. Some of those elements that you just discussed are on the books already. You just have to go through and see where it is and how it, and does it tie into what your thoughts are. And then the other issues I think you've addressed those, parking especially with council, and they have been in process doing some things for you. So you have to just let it play out here.
Okay, well, as far as the parking issue goes, yeah, I've been through that with them. There's really nothing there's not much, if anything, that they can really do about it the way that the laws are now. And I understand we went through it, you know.
Parking, I'm going to cut you off because you're well over 3 minutes and whatever.
Oh, sorry about that.
Parking is a math problem. Okay, you got a 12-foot house, you don't put 18 feet of cars in front of it. I mean, that's just a math problem. So that's what you've got with the city. You're not going to win that argument. Short course.
No, well, you can't. They've already said it's a 22 feet they have to do for different reasons, and they have all these legal requirements to do. I went through that, you know, with them, and yeah, there's nothing can be done in that regard. I understand that.
Okay then. Kim, is there anyone else? Thank you, Rod.
No, I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
All right. Then with that, I'm going to move on to the next item here, and that's where we elect a chair and a vice chair. Bill has agreed to stay on to run again for the vice chair. Anyone coming forward to want to be the chair? I think you're all muted. All right, Jonathan's not here, so I'm gonna table this and let y'all think about it some more. I would like to, I've done it, I've been it twice now, I guess it is. And I believe that everybody ought to have a chance at this. I think it's good for the commission with, as we, rotate leadership. As a crew, all of you are capable of handling this. It's nothing magic to it. It's just drive the bus. And we got a comp plan that says, hey, this is the direction we're going. And you're there just to facilitate how we get there. So if I have no folks wanting to be elected, then I'm going to table it and let you think about it some more. Be glad to answer any questions on it, any or discuss how best it works or what I do or have done. But I like each and every one of you to consider it.
David, this is Bill.
Yeah.
Aside from altruistic motives that you may have, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is where I'm coming from.
Well, yeah, I
I
appreciate
second
that.
that.
See,
appreciate
it's
that.
unanimous, David. You don't have to table it now.
I got to table it, baby. I got. Oh.
I move that you untable it.
I'm going to leave you guys with that thought. You guys think about who should drive the bus next.
How about if we get you a little brown uniform and a brown cap and you continue to drive the bus?
Well, so far you got me driving it for one more month. I mean, I'm going to leave it on. I'm going to leave it on the agenda for next time, and we'll deal with it. It's an annual event. We got to have this election, So I'm going to leave it there open for you guys to think on. And with that, if there is absolutely nothing else, then do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate everything. Kathy, thank you.
Yeah.
Tim, thank you.
Yep.
Take care all.
Aye.